Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. Today I'm going to be reviewing Promising Young Woman. Before we get into this review, I just want to remind you guys, if you are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it, just so that way you get notifications for all my new videos. And please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Really helps out the video and the channel as well, so thank you so much in advance for doing that, guys. Also, before we get, into like the review too, I just want to, kind of do a brief PSA. This film does tackle some like dark subject matter that can be triggering to some people. So just want to give you that heads up before we get into the review. I will be doing some spoilers as well, because I feel like this is one of those films that can't really go into like depth without talking a little bit spoilers with this film. So that is your warning for that as well. But yeah, Promising Young Woman, it was one of those films that I remember like seeing the trailer for it, and it initially came out last year, technically, 2020. But it was, it's like an independent film, so it didn't have as big of a release, and I'm out here in New Hampshire, so sometimes those films, we don't get to see them till like way later on. So, I finally just got a chance to see it about like a week ago or something like that. And, I was just like, oh man, there's so many like reviews and stuff like already out there. Will anyone really care if, if I put this out? And, I just finally decided, like, it's been, like I said, like about a week since I've seen the film. And it's just been something that I've just constantly gone back and thought about, different things that I just can't stop thinking about the film. So I was like, you know what, this is something that I have to talk about. And like I said, you really can't go into some details, so I feel like I have to do spoilers. So again, just a heads up, but without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this thing.
Every week, I go to a club. I act like I'm too drunk to stand. And every week, a nice guy comes over to see if I'm okay.
Okay. So Promising Young Woman stars Carey Mulligan as the lead star, Cassie, and basically she is was like a promising young med student, and she ends up dropping out of school. One of her friends has a traumatic experience. She is sexually assaulted, and we are led to believe later on in the film that she had killed herself because of that incident. So now Cassie, she's guilty because of what happened. She felt like, she should have been there for her friend when this happened. She's kind of living a double life right now. She's still she's living at home with her parents. She's about 30 years old. And so during the day, she's working at a small coffee shop, and everyone's kind of oh, why are you still working here? You could be doing better things than working at this coffee shop. But then at nighttime, she's she's living her double life, because she goes out to these bars and nightclubs and stuff like that, where she entices these nice guys to take her home. And then once she gets there, she basically forces them to reflect on what they were doing and kind of rethink, are they really nice guys after all. So as far as that concept just itself, it's funny because I remember when I first saw the trailer, I thought it was going to be one of those kind of revenge films where this girl goes after these guys, and she ends up killing them. For some reason, I don't know why I got that vibe from the trailer, but so I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that's not what they were doing at all. It was completely different. I was like, okay, cool. They they completely flipped the script as far as that goes, and a lot of different things they do in this film I thought were really original and really neat. There's one scene to kind of tie into that. There's one scene early on after the film opens up, and she ends up going home with this guy, and he's he's like, oh, I'm gonna take care of you, and he tries to have sex with her basically, and she's like, what are you doing? And then after that opening, we cut to the next morning, and she's walking down the street, and there's a shot where you see her arm, and you see what it looks like is blood dripping down her arm. And I was at first I was oh yeah, she killed that dude, but no, what it was actually she was eating a hot dog. So I was that was a really cool, just the way that was, that shot, that whole scene, I really appreciated that. So the director, Emerald Fennell, we'll talk about more about her later, but she did a fantastic job with this film. And this movie doesn't just focus on Cassie, going after just strictly men either. The main kind of idea is that she is going after, the people that were in some shape or form tied to what happened with her friend Nina when they were at med school. So there's actually one scene in particular where she ends up going to the dean's office of the school, where this this happened at, and she sets up a meeting with her. Dean doesn't remember her, at all, but then she brings up the guy, who did this to her friend, and his name's like Al, and she's like, oh yeah, like he just gave a speech, at the school, and they start talking and stuff like that, and Cassie's, brings up, it's like, oh, no one believed her or anything like that, and the dean's like, well, we get a lot of these kind of accusations, so it's one of those things where we kind of have to give these boys the benefit of the doubt. And then, things just kind of take a sharp turn there, because Cassie's like, oh, she brings up that, she basically ended up kidnapping her daughter earlier, and, she told her that, one of her, bands that she's really obsessed with was filming a music video or something like that, but what she tells the dean is that, oh, I ended up dropping your daughter off with these these bunch of college boys, and it's in the same room of what happened to her friend a couple years back, and I left them there. They had some alcohol and stuff like that, but I'm sure they'll be fine. We got to give them the benefit of the doubt. They seemed like nice boys. And, the dean's just you can see it in her face. She's like, oh shit, obviously, her kid's in trouble. But it's, it's just interesting how her tone completely changes when it goes from someone this, random student that, obviously she didn't pay too much attention to or whatever. And then when it comes to someone that she actually cares about, how she's like, you have to tell me where she is now. And Cassie's just like, oh, well, they're nice boys. We just have to, trust them. And I was just like, holy shit, that whole scene was just, super, super intense. And that was just one of several scenes throughout the film. But that, yeah, definitely one of my favorites in the movie for sure. You also have, in the film, you have kind of this love story, at one point where she ends up, she's working at the coffee shop, and she runs into this guy named Ryan, who he actually had went to school with her when she was, in med school. They seems like, they didn't really talk a whole lot then, but, he runs into her at the coffee shop, and basically tries to, ask her out. He's really awkward about it, and eventually, they start hanging out and, going on dates and stuff like that. And, he seems like a really actual, genuinely nice guy. They do a lot of, funny things, and you're just like, oh, this is kind of cute, and seems like he's super nice. But when I was watching it with my fiance, I was like, there's something he's just almost too nice. It's too perfect. There's gonna be a turn here somewhere for sure. And later on in the film, we'll get to that kind of in a second. But you have that going, and Cassie, it seems like she's gonna kind of stop going after these people. You see she kind of shuts down her account where she's it's like a Facebook or something like that, where she's kind of been tracking or looking up different people. She shuts that down. She ends up going to see her friend's mom, and her friend's mom is like, hey, I don't think she completely knew what she was doing, but she knew that basically Cassie hasn't been able to forgive herself, and she's just Nina wouldn't want this for you. You have to stop doing what you're doing and just kind of move on. And it's at that point, it looks like Cassie's getting ready to give up everything, until at one point in the film she comes across this video, and it was from the night of the events of what happened to her friend, where she was sexually assaulted. And on the video you end up hearing Ryan, the guy that she's seeing now, his voice. And then that kind of just, causes a spiral of, different events that leads into kind of basically the third act, the finale of the film, and shit really kind of hits the fan there. But I was just I knew there was something he was way too nice, it's too perfect, something's going to go wrong. And sure enough, he was a bystander in the incident, and he didn't, do anything or say anything. So, which in a lot of cases could almost be worse than some of these events, because it's you were there, you could have done something, and you chose not to, and he doesn't really remember it or doesn't bring it up or anything like that. So Cassie, obviously, she finds out, and she, approaches him at work and basically threatens to expose him and tell all of his colleagues, because he's a child pediatrician, now, and threatens to expose him and basically get him fired and everything like that. And he kind of freaks out, and he's like, you do that, we're both gonna not be doctors. And you can tell that she was really hurt by that. and basically she wants the address of the guy. His name's Al, because he's getting married now, and she wants the address for the bachelor's party because she has a one final plan before the film kind of wraps up. And he ends up giving it to her because obviously he doesn't want her to expose like the secret, because he probably would get fired. And it's that last act that crazy shit like happens like right here. So with the final act, basically we have Cassie. She finds like the bachelor like party where all these guys are or whatever. It's kind of like in like the woods, like a secluded area, and she pulls up, and first like you just hear that instrumental like remixed like Toxic theme from Britney Spears or whatever, but the way they did it was so cool. I downloaded the whole soundtrack. I have it on like my I've been listening to that for the past week or week and a half or whatever. But yeah, that remix, that version when she's like walking up to the house was awesome. She is all dressed out and like like a nurse's outfit. She has like the bubblegum pinkish like hair. And she goes up to the bachelor's party, and basically the guys think that she's like like a stripper that's there for them. She ends up going up to the house. They open up the door, they like let her in. The Al, he ends up like coming downstairs, and basically shit starts going like crazy. She tells all the guys to like get on their knees, gives them what looks like is alcohol, but we end up finding out later that she basically she drugged all of them so that way they would pass out. And then she takes Al upstairs and ends up handcuffing him to the bed. It's like, oh, this is like for my protection. And Al slowly starts to realize who she is and why she's here, and he starts freaking out. And oh my god, like that, the ending was crazy. Like just that, her performance, Carey Mulligan's performance right there was just absolutely insane, especially in this this kind of last like couple scenes like here, where she's basically interrogating Al, and she's like, I want you to what did you do to my friend Nina? And like he won't come out and say it. And I'd read something I think with the director, and at one point they did film like a scene where he does come out and say that he like raped her, like sexually assaulted her, but they felt that it just didn't seem like sincere, so they took it out. I think that was that was like a good choice too. But yeah, he like won't say it. And then basically she goes, well, my friend had to, all she thought about was just like your name, had her name like your name all over her, and so now you're gonna have her name all over you. And she gets out like a scalpel or whatever and is gonna start carving it into him. And at this point, he, the struggle between them two, they're on the bed, and he ends up breaking free like one of the handcuffs, and then he takes like a pillow and he, basically he suffocates her to death. And so that, like, especially like that scene was definitely, because it's not something that's like quick, like it goes on for like a few minutes. So that was like pretty, brutal to like watch. And I was like, the way it was like ending there, I was like, there's no way there's no way they're gonna end the film right here. I was actually kind of like pissed. And then like he ends up like he kills her, and his other friend that was there the night of what happened with Nina as well, he ends up like coming in like upstairs like the next morning and finds that she's dead. And they're like, he tells his friend Al, he's like, oh, like we'll just get rid of the body. And they end up going in the woods and lighting the body on fire and trying to get rid of the evidence. And I was just like, oh my god, like I was gonna be so pissed, because I was like, there's no way like they're gonna end the film like right here like that. And they didn't. After that, we find out like the whole big twist of the film is that Cassie basically had this whole thing set up earlier on in the movie. She had went to one of the like investigator or like the defense lawyers like in the case, and basically he was he's like, I've never been able to forgive myself since this whole thing happened. And he's like, I totally understand if you like want to hurt me or whatever. And Cassie said that she forgave him. So she had went to him, and then later on, like at this point we see that he gets like the mail, and it's like it's from Cassie or whatever, and it's like basically, I'm going to this like address in the case that I disappear, like I want you to take this right to the police. And at that point, we kind of start seeing like the events unfolding. You know, the cops like show up because like the phone and all the evidence and stuff was in there. And then they go to where Cassie, you know, her body was burned up and stuff. And the cops like find, you know, her body, you know, burned up, and or they see like the little like necklace and stuff like that. And so they go to arrest him. And that's, you know, basically she, in the end, she knew that she was probably going to die, but she had like this backup plan. And I was like, I like that ending a lot more. However, you know, after I've like thought about it, it's more, I mean, it's not like really a happy ending, but I like comparing like the two, like the original would have been much darker. And from what I heard, the director wanted to actually end the film with like Cassie like dying and like them basically getting away with it, because a lot of times unfortunately that does happen. So that was the original ending, and I was like, you know, originally I was kind of pissed, like I thought that's the way it was going to end, and I was like, oh, that's bullshit. And you know, I liked the way that they did, where she did end up getting, you know, her revenge, like basically like in the end. But you know, after having some time to think about it, I could totally see why it would make sense to end it the original way that they were going to. So either way, you know, kind of like really like works for me. But I did like the twist ending. I have seen or heard that some people have kind of been divided on that, but that's kind of just, you know, like my opinion as far as like that goes. So yeah, man, I mean, this film, like I said, I actually, funny thing, so I watched it, and I actually, right after I watched it that initial time, I watched it right afterwards, and that hasn't happened with a lot of like, you know, new films. Like it's like, you know, I'll go back and see it like, you know, maybe like the same week or something like that. Maybe it's because I had the access to it where it was, you know, it was on like demand or whatever. But I watched it again right afterwards, and yeah, no, this for sure would have been my favorite film of 2020 for sure. As far as the score goes, you know, it's hard to like, I don't want to give out, especially with like new films, like a 10 out of 10 like right away. So I'm going to say a 9.5, but I honestly think this could be something that I bump up to a 10 out of 10. It was something that I thought was just done so incredibly well. The performance from Carey Mulligan was fantastic. Like she's just so, you know, smart, witty, and you know, she just doesn't give a fuck about, you know, anything. And like, you know, in a way it's definitely kind of sad, because you know, you could see the toll and grief that this, you know, took on her. She kind of blamed herself that she wasn't there the night that this happened to her friend. And you know, basically during the film, like, you know, she doesn't care what happens to her. You see at one point where she smashes like a guy's like, you know, his car or whatever, that she kind of like is like, oh shit, like I just like did that and I can get like arrested. But, you know, by the end of the film, especially with like what happens with Ryan and stuff, you can tell that she's just like had it up to here, you know, with these type of people, and just wants to, you know, get her revenge basically, and will do whatever it takes to do that. So her performance, like I really hope that she definitely, you know, wins like, you know, best performance or best actress or whatever. I think she deserves it for sure. As far as the director goes, Emerald Fennell, you know, she was fantastic, and I believe this was like her directorial debut as far as, you know, like a film goes. And man, like there was some incredible shots like in this film. I love just the way that it was, you know, very poppy, bubblegumish like feeling to it. Like throughout the film, there's a lot of, you know, like pinks and like the soundtrack and stuff like that. A lot of like pop music, but it really fits with this film. The scene, you know, at the bachelor's like party at one point where she's like giving all the guys drinks, and you see her like chewing bubblegum. I was just like, the camera work and stuff there, I was like, holy shit, like just incredible work. I can't praise this film enough. Really good performances, you know, all around too, by the other supporting actors and actresses. So yeah, I mean, if you guys haven't seen this film, if you can't tell by now, it's definitely something I really suggest you guys check out. It's like right now it's like $20 to like rent. Otherwise, I believe it's still playing in some theaters like around us like now. It's definitely worth, if you're, you know, able to go to the theaters, I would say check it out. If not, I totally think it's worth like the $20. It's something that I will be buying for sure once it comes out on Blu-ray. So if you guys, you know, have seen Promising Young Woman, I definitely want to hear what you guys have to think. Let me know down below in the comments. What did you think of the film's ending? Would you have rather them have went with, you know, the ending that they ended up going with, where, you know, she ends up kind of getting, you know, her revenge in the end, or the initial ending where it was going to end with, you know, the guys burning her body and that was basically going to be it? Really curious to see, you know, what you guys think as far as that. Again, you know, if you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it, just so that way you get notifications for all my new videos. Please give the video a thumbs up. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.